Hello, everybody, and welcome to Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodity space. My name is Jesse Day. Before we dive in, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investment advice. Do your own due diligence. And today's guest is the VP of Corporate Development at Monumental Energy, a company focused on exploring lithium brine salars in Chile and investing in near-term gas production assets in New Zealand. We're going to be discussing the oil and gas markets, the lithium markets, as well as get the latest updates on what Monumental Energy is up to. It's Max Sally. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Jesse. I think the last time we spoke was in the spring in March, so it's been almost 8 months, and a lot has happened since those 8 months. It was definitely a slow summer, but we were not slow at Monumental. There's been a lot of due diligence done for our new transaction, which took about 4 months to do. It's an expensive thing to do, including site visits in New Zealand to meet TSX standards for this new fundamental acquisition. So busy summer. I wish the stock price performed better, but we're going to try and do that now.
Great. Well, I cannot wait to dive into Monumental. Before we do that, I'd like to take a step back and look at the natural gas markets for a moment. A very interesting molecule and one that's kind of hard to price into the future. Different jurisdictions having different pricing. Your natural gas is sold directly to the New Zealand market at a big premium, which is obviously a great deal for you guys. But if you could take a step back and just give us your view on the future of the natural gas markets worldwide, how you see it all playing out.
So I'll tell you how New Zealand saw it playing out. 10 years when they tried to stop drilling in New Zealand for oil and gas, they thought they were going to go more solar power, other types of energy sources. That failed pretty quickly. And this is why the price of oil and gas is so high in the country. The delay in investments. They're having rolling blackouts now in New Zealand because they don't have enough energy, specifically natural gas and oil. And so the price of nat gas in New Zealand went from $10 an MCF in New Zealand to about 25 over the last 10 years. And you can't even get a spot price because it really changes. And so our partner, New Zealand Energy Corp, actually had a company called Genesis, which for anyone in BC would be like your local gas producer, Fortis BC. And they prepaid for gas before the well was even drilled because they need that so badly. Oil, also very big in New Zealand. And where do you get it from? And so the new government is very pro oil and gas. They're almost willing to pay you to drill wells to bring it online because it's so expensive. So very niche market. If you look at North America or Canada, you're probably paying Canadian $2.50 to $3 an MCF. I think 42% of all energy in the United States comes from natural gas. So it's very abundant. It's just a matter of, because it's so abundant, the price is lower. Where in New Zealand, that's why you get that big premium. But it's never going away. If anyone thinks oil and gas is going away, not anytime soon. And I think this is where, especially in the niche market like New Zealand, it benefits Monumental as a shareholder of someone that will be producing gas, but as now an investor and acquiring a royalty to actually generate our own revenue in specifically oil production.
That's fantastic. I'm a big fan of hydrocarbons. I don't get the push to try to get rid of them. They're like the lifeblood of civilization. We do not want to go back to the Stone Ages there. I wonder what your take is on AI data centers, because there's been a lot of talk about the incredible energy demands that are going to be required. A lot of people are talking as well about natural gas playing a key role in powering these data centers. I wonder what your thoughts are there.
Well, you went from the Bitcoin and all the production facilities for that, and now you're going to data centers. I was talking to a broker at Haywood probably a few weeks ago about Microsoft restarting a uranium plant in the States just to power the AI data centers. So you're going to have tremendous excess of energy that you need to meet your standards. And where are you going to get it from? And that's the thing. Natural gas is never going away. Everyone's looking at other ways to get energy, but the consumption is going to grow every year. In the niche market like New Zealand, that may not be the factor, but the United States completely. And so it's something that you have to look at. And natural gas is very clean. If anyone says it's not, I beg them to go and reread the facts. But, it's an important part of our business, and no one can take away oil. I mean, the United States is the founders of the United States were generating oil production. And we all need that. And so if anyone thinks that's going away because of electric cars, it's not. You need it. It's never going anywhere. The prices are high. I think they're a bit down because obviously there's election and cheaper gas prices make elections work better. But I'm very excited about the future. And I think, yeah, like you said, the more data centers, the more Bitcoin miners, it all takes energy. And where are you going to get that right now? You're not getting it from solar panels or dams.
I would like to pull on that thread regarding oil for a moment here and get your thoughts on how you see the oil markets playing out at this point, because obviously there's a lot of geopolitical risk at the moment. Oil is another market that's very difficult to forecast prices into the future. But I think we are going to need more energy moving forward. There's the story of an emerging middle class and a lot of developing economies. How do you see the oil markets playing out? Do you think over the long run, we're going to see oil prices move to the upper right of the screen?
I think they have to. I mean, I'm not an expert in the numbers of barrels produced every day in each country, but the fact is, for our specific market, we need it. The U.S. needs it. Everything involves oil. Uh, I think Brent crude is about $73 today U.S., which is the highest price for oil. It will probably get higher after the election. We need it. We use it for everything, even turning it, using it to then provide power, energy into the electric market. And so, I mean, as someone who's also in love with the hydrocarbon space and done very well over the last 15 years on it, it's never going away. You can have people argue that, but the fact is the US produces an amazing amount of oil and it's not going anywhere. And I think it's, like for us doing this transaction, it's so easy to get production out of these wells, right? With if you're trying to do any type of other energy, it's difficult besides oil and gas. And so I think it's a space that we want to be in. It's not going anywhere, and I think you see prices keep going up and up and up, and that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, let's talk about lithium as well. Obviously, there's a lot of drivers working in favor of lithium, a lot of catalysts. However, we have seen a downturn in the price of both lithium and equities related to lithium since around 2022. There was a bit of a lithium fever there for a while, and it seemed to have cooled off. The conversation is more muted now when it comes to the lithium space. Do you think lithium is set up to stage a comeback at this point?
Lithium's always had a comeback, going back to when Tesla did their IPO 2012 and then 2015, 16, and then the rebound in 2020, which went to 2022, kind of to three. You see the price, which almost went to $100,000 in LCE and then completely collapsed. A lot of companies raised a lot of money, a lot of pegmatites, a lot of clay projects, which are still not economical, even at the high prices. And so you have a lot of these companies that IPO'd or raised money and spent a significant amount of their capital on promotional dollars. So a lot of stocks went from 5 cents to $1 and are back at 5 cents and can't raise any money. Lithium brine has always been the most economic form of lithium and the cleanest because you're not having to truck things, include, and that also includes a lot of other factors. But usually, when you have an evaporation pond for lithium, like in Argentina, it's on site. You're not trucking pegmatites. You're not, crushing anything. And so, yes, lithium will come back. I've dealt with a few cycles. I've done very well in a few cycles, and this is why we are holding on to our solar. We've delayed the payments for a better time to focus on our oil revenue and other oil opportunities. But, something I think that people forget is grade is important. And when you're mining pegmatites, you lose like a third of that uh, into production. Where with brine, you're getting that grade through to battery grade lithium production. And so I really feel that lithium will come back, but I think the hundreds of companies that jumped in when the market was hot are going to disappear because they can't raise funds, and you're going to be left with the companies that own solars or bigger companies in Australia that have the pegmatite. But all the juniors that can't raise capital are going to simply disappear for the lithium space. And that could provide an opportunity in the future when lithium prices come back. But right now, it's a beaten down sector, and I don't see how they're getting out of it.
Now, when we look at the demand drivers for lithium, obviously EVs are kind of the main one. and the one that is being discussed ad nauseum. Is that do you see that story, the EV story, evolving further? And obviously, there's a lot of government regulation coming down the pipeline regarding the need to switch to electric vehicles, etc. A lot of people point out that perhaps the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure, isn't there in a lot of these places. There's some other downsides that people talk about when it comes to EVs. How do you see the EV story playing out, and are there other demand drivers for lithium that you think people should be paying attention to?
So that's a good question. I was at a lithium conference in Nevada they have every year. Fast Markets puts on a conference in about June, and I was sitting with a banker out of New York that's raised probably almost $1 billion plus for lithium. And what he said is, don't look at the EVs, look at the buses or electric vehicles per se, like the passenger vehicles. But if you look at the electric buses out of China, which use 20 or 30 times more than your standard car, they're big vehicles. They are using a lot of lithium. And so I think, if the demand lowers here in Canada for like a passenger vehicle, a 5-seater, the demand in China is very, very strong. These buses like BYD produce use a ton more lithium than the cars. And the price will fix itself. And obviously China controls a lot of it. But if you look at the sales in Asia, they're still going very strong for much bigger vehicles. So can you just look at EVs? I think there's other types of energy uses for lithium, but I see a lot of hybrid vehicles, which are obviously oil and lithium. So you're driving your first 30 kilometers could be electric, like a Toyota, and then the rest is on you have a combustion engine. So you have both. I think the mix is very important, and this is why we're doing both. You got a lot of these incentives that are drying up. I think now with this election coming up, Elon Musk is doing a very good job promoting Trump, just because I think it benefits him if he can get more of these charging stations throughout California, right? He's a very smart man. He's the richest man in the world. But this makes a big difference for him, and a much smarter man than I will ever be. And I just look at what he's doing, and I think lithium will have a big comeback, and I think he's the one that's in the forefront of this.
Let's zoom out and look at the commodities complex as a whole right now, because I've spoken to a lot of people. Obviously, this show's called Commodity Culture, so we speak to a lot of people who are bullish on commodities here. But nonetheless, there is this recurring story of a rotation from overvalued tech, the NVIDIAs, the Teslas, the Magnificent Seven of the world, into real assets in the form of commodities. A lot of analysts point to years of underinvestment in the space, whether it's energy, whether it's uranium, precious metals, obviously, in a bull market at the moment. What are your thoughts on the commodities complex as a whole and this talk of a commodities super cycle?
I support it. I've heard this for years. I'm waiting for it to happen. I mean, the price of gold's up $800, since January. And I think I said to you before we were recording, for Christmas last year, I bought my kids an ounce of gold versus a toy they're going to throw away in a month and put them in the safe. So, you're up on that transaction. A lot of commodity prices are up. Oil is a finicky one because especially during election times, the price of gas being low at the pump is better for elections. It will come back. I think there has been an underinvestment. The governments have to work to permitting things quicker. Especially mining. From discovery to production is a 15 to 20-year game. For oil, it's a lot quicker. This is why we're there. I'm a big fan of gold. I've always been a big fan of gold. I've ran a few gold companies, and like I was saying too, I wish we just spent all the money that we raised buying physical gold. Because when you get into the thing about the super cycle, is you have all these companies, you have management costs, you have exchange costs, you have BLM fees if you're in Nevada, and there's all these costs associated. So I think the actual commodities are performing very well. Do investors have the capital to keep writing checks into these stories? You look at NVIDIA. I mean, the multiple they're trading at is insane. But obviously, it's working. People want that story now. It's a hot sector. If you look at a lot of these producing miners, they're making record cash flow, which is amazing. And so they'll probably have to start paying a dividend or increase the dividend just simply because they're making so much money. Obviously, reinvesting for new discoveries to grow their resource base. But I've always been a fan of the super cycle. I think we're very, very close. And someone who's been waiting to participate in this and it's been difficult for the junior sector, right? And so I agree with you. I think it's coming, but I've heard that for years. So hopefully it happens as soon as possible.
Well, let's discuss how Monumental Energy fits into the picture. It's been a while since you've been on the show. Some exciting things happening at the company you mentioned. oil royalties. Talk to us about your natural gas production in New Zealand, as well as what's going on with lithium in Chile right now for you guys.
So we'll start with the oil royalty. So we are a very large shareholder of a company called New Zealand Energy Corp. They are currently drilling a gas well in New Zealand. They are on pause right now. They'll start re-drilling the well November 14th, I think the date is. They've pre-sold gas to a local company because they need it that badly. uh, on the same, in the same area, we about 3 kilometers away from them, we were able to get a deal done to restart 2 workover wells. These wells have previously produced almost 1 million barrels of oil. They were shut in due to equipment issues. They need some new tubing, piping. The pump jacks need a bit of maintenance. And the company simply had no money at the time to restart these. So New Zealand is focused on the gas. We are going to come in and pay to restart these workovers about 800,000 New Zealand, which is about 675 Canadian or about 575 US. So not expensive, very de-risked. It's about 3 kilometers from a production facility that will be trucked to that facility. It's on a main road, just off a main road. We have photos in our presentation if anyone wants to see. We'll have some video footage soon. And it's a 25% royalty agreement. So how the terms work is we will put up all the money to start. We'll get 75% payback and then go into a 75% agreement. And the nice thing about a royalty, like a streaming thing, is there's no risk to us. So any costs incurred to New Zealand Energy following the restart goes to them, not us. And for as long as these wells produce, we'll get 25%. The nice thing about these wells is flush production. So we'll probably flush produce 250 to 300 barrels a day. So we'll get our payback pretty quickly within a few months and then have a nice steady stream of revenue. So the money spent isn't money gone. We get that back and then go into a nice revenue. What that also does for us, now being a big partner with New Zealand Energy, is we were in New Zealand, we did a site visit, we saw about 6 or 7 sites. They have a ton of oil targets that can be drilled off existing permitted pads that Monumental could farm into and then have much bigger production. And so following the successful restart of these wells, we will make a decision of which area we want to go into and then go to the market and discuss what does the market want us to do? What do our shareholders want to see? What targets should we go towards? And how do we make that move forward?
Great. Well, talk to us about some recent news. I want to start with the fact that you've commenced drilling at your Tariki 5 gas well. You announced this at the start of October. Walk us through those details and your plans for that project moving
Yeah,
forward.
so whenever New Zealand Energy puts out news, we like to reiterate it in a press release. So they're drilling the gas well, nothing to do with us, not our costs. We obviously are a big shareholder, so obviously some of the money we invested, they're using for that. They ran into a fault that the wellhead was dull, so they have to go back in from another angle. They're currently raising some funds. Looks like those funds are pretty much complete. They will restart drilling that well November 14th from a different angle. And from what I've spoken to them and other individuals, I think this time around they'll get into the gas well, and they should be within 3 weeks of November 14th. So let's say Christmas time, get it all finished, closed, and hopefully tied into production. Again, these things are risky. I think they've solved the issue, and for us, that doesn't affect anything for our oil transaction. And then we hope to have a rig over at the Copper Moki site for Q1 of 2025, and our workovers take only about 3 weeks. The parts are on order. It's just a bit of maintenance to do. All the infrastructure on site is in fantastic condition. We were on site. We have video footage, photos that we'll share with our shareholders. But very excited about that. That'll be huge revenue for them. They do have a dividend strategy, but then separately, our oil revenue will come in from a separate part of this transaction.
Could you shed some more light on the Copper Moki oil and gas workover wells? You've given a great summary thus far. I'm just wondering about a couple things. One is the whole state of the oil and gas industry in New Zealand. I think you mentioned that, they had tried to switch to renewable energy. That didn't work out for them. And so now they really need this oil and gas. So if you could shed some more light on that, and also just your relationship with the government, anything else about the jurisdiction you're in that you think people should know about?
So in terms of the government, all we had to do is refile a consent form. Our lawyers did that. New Zealand Energy Corp did that. They've already received it. They've approved it. And so it's very easy when you're restarting a past producer versus going into a new field. It could take years. So that's been submitted and completed. So once we do close this transaction, TSX approval, hopefully within the next week, then once New Zealand Energy Corp is done finishing their Tariki well, that team will go over to Coppermoki, which is only about 3 kilometers away, and begin those workovers. So I would say early January, mid-January 2025. And like I said, you're getting a $5 discount to Brent crude prices, whatever that is. Today it's $72 US, 73. It was 85. It'll probably go up again after the election. And gas prices are unstable because there's just such a lack of gas. So it's a good business. It's a niche market, and I think what we'll do is following the Coppermoki restarts, you and I will do another interview and give an update to the market on how that is going. But these are very, very low risk workovers. They've been known to produce a lot of oil, and I think for us to be able to take the capital, again, anything we do in the junior markets are risky. We're always risking capital. But this seemed like the best bang for your buck to get revenue. And it's a fundamental acquisition, so this is why the stock was halted. If it's a revenue-generating transaction or the transaction you're doing is more than 50% of your current exploration spend, the TSX has to review it. We have a tech report coming in any day now, and then we'll submit that to TSX and hopefully come trading sometime this week or next week.
Fantastic. Well, could you walk us through what's going on in Chile right now with your lithium project there?
So we were in Chile, myself and Michelle DeCecco, my CEO, to meet with the government. A lot of companies did. They are doing it's essentially a strategy to allow permits to exploit lithium. You could always explore, but exploit is different. So to produce. And so the government's finally working on a lithium strategy. They should be announcing another round of salars that are available to exploit, I would say sometime before the end of the year. It's definitely, the sentiment for the government is improved significantly since we first had our Laguna Blanca salar in April 2022. And it's just dealing with the community. The community we're dealing with is the community behind SQM and Albemarle. They are one of the wealthiest communities in Chile because of that. A very smart community. They're called the Tocanao. Wealthy, smart, business savvy individuals, and they're putting together their own lithium board right now to meet with companies in their jurisdiction to essentially grant permission. As in anywhere in the world, in Canada, we have to meet with Indigenous. There's a lot of things we could have done, but trying to work with the community has been it's been a slow process. But the last thing you want to do is go around them. And so here we are. We're very, very close to that. I've been saying this for a while, which is frustrating. And this is why we went into oil and gas, because it's taken a lot longer. But I think 2025 will be a pivotal year for Chile and for us in New Zealand. And I think there's a lot to discuss in the next 3 to 6 months with you.
Let's close by, I'll open the floor to you. Is there anything you wanted to discuss when it comes to Monumental Energy? Anything you'd like to emphasize that you think potential shareholders should be aware of?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of my own company. Clearly, I'm all logoed up. I wear this every day. I want people to see what I'm doing, and a big supporter. Invested a lot of my own money in this, family's money, friends' money. I think it's a good opportunity to invest in the company. Again, I've been saying that for a while, but you got to practice what you preach. We have the capital to fund all our workovers. We're not needing to go to the market. We have a big chunk of New Zealand Energy stock, which is also marketable securities for free trading if we need to generate extra cash flow. And just it's been a tough year. I mean, when I spoke to you in March, I think a lot of the companies that we probably discussed have gotten cheaper. And at some point, there's a compelling story to get investors in, especially at these prices. And I think that I know once our stock comes trading again, I'll be the first person in the market buying stock. And so I support what I do. I appreciate our patience from our shareholders, and I look forward to a very successful 2025 for everybody in any sector.
Well, I will put a link in the description below to the Monumental Energy website as well as social media for people who want to follow the company. Thank you so much, Max, for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with the audience.
Thank you for having me again, Jesse. Always appreciate your time.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.